I am not here by myself today. I am joined by a fantastic group of speakers who were all involved in developing this resource for care homes. I can't leave the slide on here long enough for you all to read these fantastic bios, but as I said before, we will share the slides afterwards. So please do go and have a look at the fantastic people who are involved in this work. Not everyone who was involved is here today, but this is a large part of the group. And John unfortunately isn't here today, but everyone else is and will be speaking in the panel discussion later. So to highlight this group. So before I go into the resource, I want to give you a little bit of background about the study. So I'm a researcher. So the design of this resource was part of a research study called CIRCLE, and CIRCLE stands for Creating Inclusive Residential Care for LGBTQ+ Elders. It was a 2-year research study funded by the National Institute for Health and Care Research, and the study finishes the end of this month. The aim of the study was to explore different ways in which care providers, and mostly providers of residential care for older people, could be supported to improve their LGBTQ+ care offer. So what we know is that a lot of care staff do not always feel confident in providing LGBTQ+ inclusive care. And unfortunately, a lot of older LGBTQ+ people still experience discrimination. And we, with this project, wanted to see how we could support care providers to be more LGBTQ+ inclusive in their day-to-day care practice. And we explored 3 different ways to support providers. And one of the ways was to design this new resource that we're launching today. Some of you will have also attended our community of practice meetings, which was another way that we were supporting providers. But today we're here to talk about this new resource that we're launching. The resource and why it's called co-design is because we were designing it together with people who were very invested in the topic. So it wasn't just a group of researchers designing this resource, but we really wanted to do it together with a group of people who were older and LGBTQ+ and a group of care staff. So I'll tell you a bit more about that in a second. There definitely are already resources out there that are very informative, but they often lack a focus on actions. So actions that care staff can take to make their care more inclusive. They're often quite wordy and text heavy, and provide a lot of important and informative background information to LGBTQ+ inclusion, but there is a bit of a lack of focus on action. So what can you do to make your care more inclusive? And we also didn't know of any resources that were fully co-developed with care staff and older LGBTQ+ people. So we wanted to do that in this project. We were not prescriptive about what the resource should look like, or what sort of information it should contain. Sort of the main pointers we had was that it should focus on that action, and that it should be usable in care practice. But other than that, it was very much open when we started this process. So we didn't know what it was going to look like, what the format was going to be, what exactly the content was going to be. We really wanted that to be informed by the people who were involved in designing the resource. So a little bit more about what co-design is, because that's quite a researchy term. So co-design is a process in which experts by experience, and experts by experience are people who are experts because of what their lived experience is. So in this case, older LGBTQ+ people, because their lived experience is being an older LGBTQ+ person. And professionals, in this case, care staff, and they work in partnership to improve services or to develop solutions or interventions or resources. And in this case, we were working on creating a resource on LGBTQ+ inclusion for care homes. And normally in research, there can be quite a bit of a hierarchy where the researchers are sort of the more of the leaders of the group that just make the ultimate decisions about things. And what you try to achieve in co-design is to break down that hierarchy and really come together as a group of people who are on equal footing, who all have input into the final product or final solution or service that you develop. Um, and that's what we're trying to achieve in this process. So the researchers were there as equal members of the group as the older LGBTQ plus people and the care home staff. The older LGBTQ plus people really offered the insights into what is most important to know about LGBTQ plus inclusion in care. What should care staff really know when they look at this resource? What should be the key messages? And care home staff are really important to be involved because they know what kind of formats, what kind of messages work best in a care home context, what things would be engaging for care staff and what would really not work. So it was really helpful to have both of those perspectives involved. And then the researchers were there to sort of shepherd the process to make sure that we stayed within the time limit we had, within the budget we had, and to ask sort of questions that would make the group think about what direction they wanted to go in. So we had, this was our group. We had 4 older LGBTQ plus people, 4 care home staff, 3 researchers, and 1 digital artist. And the artist was there to help us design the resource. So they listened to our discussions, our conversations, and sort of translated that into something visual, something that looked like a resource rather than just us talking about it. We had 6 meetings between October 2023 and March 2024. And we started with an quite open and sort of empty sheet, as I explained before. And then we started talking about what exactly we wanted to create, what the audience would be. We started thinking about the best format, because there's all sorts of different formats that you can develop resources in these days. And then also the content. It was an online process. So here's a funny still from Zoom. You can't get a Zoom still without people all looking funny. I'm sorry. But yeah, it was all online. And we met for 2 hours at the time and created the resource. Well, and then the end product, the new resource, we're very proud to present the Circle Care Home Guide. This is what the front cover looks like. And this resource is really targeted at care homes, but we think it can also be informative for people that working in care settings that are similar to care homes or any type of care setting that works with older people. But it's very much specified to the care home context. It's available in both a physical form and in online formats, which I'll come back to in a second as well. But in a physical form or printed form, people can wear it in a uniform pocket, or they can put it in induction packs for new staff. They can use it in staff training. It can really be used as like a conversation starter with staff or residents or family. And we really hope that it's used in this sort of multitude of ways. So the guide is available as a limited number of what we call Z cards. So a Z card is essentially a guide that when it's folded in, it's the size of a credit card, which is really easy to carry around with you. And then you can fold it out as a sort of map type structure. And then it has a front and a back, and I'll show you in a second what the front and the back look like. And it can offer a lot of information, but in a very small, easy to carry around format. So we have a limited number of printed copies, and that is because we were limited by the budget that we had for this project. The limited number of copies is are being distributed in some of the local authorities we were working with, and that was mostly the Kent and Sussex area. But we also have, for those of you who may be attending the CARE show in Birmingham next month, there will also be quite a few copies available there. They're free. I forgot to mention that. Sorry, it's quite important. We are hoping that we can offer more printed copies in the future, but this is a bit available, a bit dependent on more funding. So there might be local authorities who are interested in investing in printing some more copies. This is by no means a business venture, so we're not interested in making this a for-profit endeavor. We just need to find funding to cover the printing costs. So if you happen to be of an organization or a local authority who is interested in printing the physical copies, please do feel free to get in touch. And we also have made it all available online, because we wanted people to be able to access the information, but the uniqueness of the Z card is something that you can't fully create online, but it's still great that people can have access to everything. And we'll share the link to the online access in a little bit as well in the chat. So in addition to that physical Z card, we have a video that presents similar content to sort of like the key messages of the Z card. And that was really because the group thought about not everyone likes to take in content by reading. Not everyone can read. So we have a video available online as well. Then you can print a booklet version of the guide. So that's not in a Z card format, but you can create it into a booklet, and you can also print it as an A4 version. So you could put it, for example, put it up on a notice board, or anywhere else where you think it would be appropriate. So here's a little preview of what the front and the back of the unfolded Z card look like. So I know it's too small to read, but you can all go online and download it to fully read it. But you can see on the left side, which is sort of like the text heavy side of the Z card, where we take someone through the care journey. So it goes from looking for a care home to end of life care, and then different steps along that journey. And then at the bottom, there are sections that are coming into throughout the care journey. So for example, things like family and friends or entertainment and celebrations. And for all these different elements of the care journey, we've offered very practical, positive actions that people can take to make the care experience of older LGBTQ+ people more inclusive. Most of these actions are free and won't cost any money and are really just focused on your behavior and the type of language you use. They're actually quite small changes that can make a big difference to someone's experience in a care home. And yeah, we really hope that they offer a guideline for people on how to provide inclusive care, because a lot of people want to provide inclusive care, but they're not sure how. And you can be reassured that the content of this is fully informed by people who identify as older LGBTQ+ people. We've also added a little bit of information on why it's needed, but we've kept that fairly light because we really want to focus on those positive actions. And then on the other side of the Z card, you can see at the bottom there is a poster, which is a poster of an inclusive care home. And it shows 3 residents, and with the residents you can see quotes that come from the actual older LGBTQ+ people who worked on the project. And the quotes say something about what it means to people to receive inclusive care, So for example, the person on the left says, "When you see me as a whole person, you will understand me more." And the person on the right says, "When care is LGBTQ+ inclusive, I can physically relax, I feel safe, and I can blossom." So the video is also available as the resource is also available as a video. We don't have time to watch the whole video. It's about 5 minutes long, but you can share this, for example, with your staff. You can watch it in staff meetings, but you can also, for example, have it playing in your reception area. A lot of care homes told us that they have digital screens in their reception areas, or put it on your website, for example. I'm just going to play it for a couple of seconds just so that you get an idea of what it looks like.
Older LGBTQ+ people still face discrimination when engaging with social care services.
Many go back into the closet to feel safe when they move into a care home. And at the same time, many care home staff feel they don't have the knowledge or skills to provide inclusive care.
So the voiceovers of the video are people who worked on the project, which I think is fantastic. And yeah, it's about a 4 or 5 minute video that provides you with the same key messages as you can find in the Z card, but then in a video format.
Older LGBT.
That's not what I meant to do. Just wanted the next slide. There we go. So how can you access it? We have a website created so that you can access the online version of the Z card. You can see the link here on the slide and also a QR code to it, but one of my colleagues will also put the link in the chat. You will have to sort of go through a registration page, and that's just so that we can track who is downloading and using the guide, because we're really interested to see what the reach of the guide is, how many people are using it, and we're also quite interested in hearing your feedback about what you think, how it works in practice. But it's completely free, so you're just registering so that we know what the reach of the guide is, but at no point do you have to pay to download the online materials. And this website is live from today, so you should be able to access this right away. So this is all the access to the online materials. If you were interested in the printed physical Z cards, as I mentioned before, the printing would have to be covered, but feel free to get in touch with me if you are interested in that. Yes. So then to finish this presentation, I just want to mention that it takes a village to bring something like this together. So a very big thank you to all the people on this slide and to the universities and the funder. It was a big operation, and as I've said, we've worked on this for a year, and we're very proud of the end result and really hope that as many of you as possible will start using this guide in practice, and let us know how you find using it. We've tried to make it really accessible, really focus on those positive actions that you can take. It really doesn't have to be difficult, and it can make a big difference to how inclusive care is. The last slide is another sort of overview of the different links. And as I said, the slides will be made available, so you can then click those links there as well. There's also a link to the wider study website in case you wanted to know a bit more of background to the study, and some contact details. Yeah, thank you very much for joining. So I will stop sharing this. And as you can see, the link has been shared in the chat about where you can access the online materials. And now we're going to move to the panel discussion. So I'm just going to wait a second until my colleagues have been spotlighted to the screen. In the meantime, I'll have a quick look if there are any questions. Okay, people are interested in looking at the guide, which is fantastic. So we've shared the link. Brilliant. So there's a question around how will this piece of work be disseminated? Example, how will East Sussex County Council ensure care homes across Hastings receive this fantastic work? So we've been working with East Sussex, West Sussex and Brighton and Hove, and they've received a few thousand copies. And they, through their care home matrons and care home conferences are making sure that the care homes are actually getting the physical copies. So that should be happening in those local authorities. The question above, I would love to know if the major care home companies are being targeted to download the resource and share with direct care home staff. So one of the ways we are targeting is through this event, but we're also doing a lot more communication and media work to make sure the word gets out there about this resource. I'll personally be doing more targeting via email and calls as well, and working with organizations like the Outstanding Society, and also Contact at Skills for Care will hopefully help promote that through the bigger care home companies. And my hope is also that the bigger branches will be interested in investing more printing, for example. So I hope that answers your question. I'll answer the last one before going to the panel discussion. The CQC, yes. So we had someone on the advisory group for this study who is part of the CQC, and it is very much our aim to connect this research to the CQC as well. Absolutely. And I see Isabel has there put her contact details for ESA 6. Thank you, Isabel. Okay, brilliant. So moving to the panel discussion. So I have 6 fantastic people joining me today who were part of the co-design group for this resource. You can find their full biographies in the slides, but maybe you want to do 30 seconds of introducing yourself, who you are, and then we can move to the first question. Martin, would you be okay going first?
Certainly. Can you hear me okay, Jolie?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Hi, folks. It's Martin Wells here. I live in East Lancashire, and the reason why I was engaged, I wanted to be engaged with the project is my mom is in a care home. She's got severe dementia. And I actually spoke to the manager of the care home to say, what do you actually do about LGBTQ plus promotion? And she said, oh, Martin, we really, really want to get to task with this. And that's what really connected me with this project.
Thank you, Martin. Brilliant. Sibby.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Sibby Sawyer. I am a regional support manager with Care Outlook. We are a care provider, mainly based in London, but we deliver services in terms of extra care services as well as home care. And we work with over 1,500 staff plus counting at the moment. But my interest in the project was because I work mainly based at Bank House, which is an extra care scheme in Vauxhall in London, and it is very much a diverse community which has LGBTQ plus elders. But I wanted to get to grips with first of all my own knowledge and my own awareness of what the needs are of the residents or elders that are moving into our care services, but also to make sure that I was giving them the support and the help that they needed. But importantly, I was very much aware that I needed to also upskill our staff team in their knowledge and their awareness. And that's what captured my interest and why I wanted to get involved with this project.
Thank you, Sibby. Sally, you're next on my screen.
Hello, everybody. And I just want to say that I do have more clothes than just this orange sweatshirt that I was shown on wearing in the previous
the other picture.
Yeah, I have got more clothes. So I'm an independent social worker, but with a long career in statutory social work within different local authorities. So I have professional experience, and I predominantly work with older people at end of lives, people going into care homes, extra care housing, living in their own accommodation at home, and been very aware that social work staff needed to be upskilled when placing people into care homes. But alongside that, working with the care homes themselves, that staff were crying out to have further information and further support. So for me, it's a personal, professional interest that I have, and been delighted to be involved in the project.
Thank you, Sally. Fantastic. Sue, you're next on my screen.
Can I cope with the technology? Yes,
Yeah,
I think I
you've
can.
done it.
My background is in occupational therapy, so like Sally, I also have a sort of professional interest in this area, but from a more personal basis, my wife was diagnosed with dementia 3 years ago. So I came at it with the premise that at some point, either she and or I are going to need residential care. And if we can help people to improve the quality of that, then that was something that was very well worth getting on board with. It was great.
Thank you, Sue. Fantastic. Mike.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all there. Yeah, my situation is very little background in terms of care, other than a bit like Sue. My husband developed dementia as young as 53. He died 2 years ago at the age of 67. And my experience was at the beginning of this was to look at research around dementia. Didn't know anything about that. Second of all, care. Knew nothing about that. And when I read reports at that time, and unfortunately they're still going on, that there was a lot of cases of abuse, of neglect, of misunderstanding. And these reports from different organizations, not just in the UK, but all over Europe and actually major parts of the, if you like, the Western world as well. And I was fearful. The only idea that Tom would end up in care because it would be out of my hands I couldn't bring myself to do that. I cared for him at home until he died. So that was the first stage of why I got interested in it. The next stage was so looking at care homes, no idea whether they were receptive to my husband or not. Absolutely no idea. And you might assume that, do we make the assumption that they are? Well, I don't think we can, based on the historic records of cases which weren't too good. The second bit of this really is that drew me into it in a more professional way in terms of what I do now, is that we know proportionately 70, 80, 90,000 LGBTQ plus people in this country living with dementia. Who knows how many people around them, main carers, main supporters, friends, relatives, and so on. But we don't know where they are. We have very little contact with all of these people, probably in care, many of them, and probably, possibly, and this is what we don't know because we don't have the statistics, is that they might be too frightened to come out. So they're hiding their sexuality, they're hiding their relationships, they're hiding their life. And that is a driver for me for change, among many other things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Nikki.
Hi, I've got a really bad cold and I'll do my best talking. My name's Nikki. I manage a residential care home that also take people with dementia in West Sussex in Bognor Regis, and I've been the manager there for, I think, coming up to 15 years now. So I joined the group because obviously things are changing and I wanted to not just be ticking a box for the CQC, but actually know why I was ticking that box. So I joined the group to gain some insight and knowledge into what was needed to ensure that my environment for people coming in was going to be inclusive and that they would feel comfortable. Despite it being such a big thing, there is very little training for care home staff that is really of any great value. There's lots of e-learning and that kind of thing, but for me there's still a real gap for sort of trying to educate my work, my staff, my relatives coming in, and also my residents as well, because some are very elderly and don't really kind of acknowledge, as it were. So for me it was to educate everybody and hope that in the future that I would be able to welcome people in and that I would have an inclusive environment.
Thank you, Nikki. Brilliant. So I'd like to start with the question to all of you. I spoke a little bit in the presentation about how co-design is meant to sort of break down that hierarchy and how we should all have equal input and all our perspectives should be valued. And I just wanted to ask of you, how did you experience that in this process? Sue.
For me, Jolie, I have to say it was an unfailingly positive experience. I'd never done anything like this before. And for me, it did what it said on the tin. you promised co-design, you promised equality, you promised support in order to enable us to participate in it equally. And for me, that was exactly what happened. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Martin.
Thanks, Jolie. The thing that really hits me is the word congruency. I know you've not paid me to say this, but folks, I've not paid. Jolie's not paid me to say this. Some embarrassment's coming up now. The congruency I see with how you managed the meetings, how you supported us, that congruency has gone from right at the beginning right up until now. And my guess is, and it's gonna follow. I've seen so many initiatives which you know, oh, this is just for the research, I just want to get my professorship, and then it's forgotten. But I see that congruency.
Thank you, Martin. That's really great to hear, and definitely something I was hoping to achieve. Mike.
Thank you. Yes, for me, it's about having people with the lived experience present in a project. It's not a straightforward thing to do historically. Academic projects, if you like, it's a difficult one to bring in people that don't have credibility because of certain citations or other reasons. Whereas in this case, the importance of listening to the stories that people have here, both from a professional point of view, from a personal point of view, really underline the value of what's come out at the other end. Because without those experiences, how do you get to that point where you produce something that can influence change? And given, as I said before, about the number of reports that have been done over the many decades, but with recommendations, but nothing actually comes out of it. I'm not saying everything's like that, but too much of it is like that. This one has an outcome, and I think that's the huge value of this particular project. Let alone the inclusion of people who wouldn't ordinarily have a voice.
Thank you, Mike. And for me, it's like unbelievable to think that you would write something about recommendations for inclusion of older LGBTQ plus people without involving older LGBTQ plus people. But as you say, it's not happened enough in the past. So really happy we've been able to do that here. Sally.
Yes, I was just thinking, and from what Sue was saying, and and obviously from Mike's experience. So I experience episodes of poor health, and at some point, it is very likely that I may well end up in a residential nursing care home. And for me, there's something around the financial aspect of that as well, because it is our pink pound, if you like. And at the end of the day, a lot of care homes are run by private businesses. So in order to make sure I get value for my money, and also acceptance of my identity, it's really important that staff are upskilled, residents are upskilled, any visitors to the care homes are upskilled, and families know what's actually happening within the care homes, because we're all the same. We're just different by a sexual orientation, but we're all the same individuals.
Thank you, Sally. Oh, I thought Sibby had her hand up as well, but did you want to come in, Sibby?
I did.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just to echo on the sentiments that have been shared by everyone so far, I think for me, everyone is absolutely correct. We have an end product at the end of all of this, and it's not just an end product where we can just tick off a box. It's actually a practical tool that can be used right this very minute. It's got very practical, very easy to follow guidance that staff can follow, that somebody who's on that journey of finding a care service can follow, that a professional can look at and think, okay, what do I need to be worrying about, and how do I guide someone through this journey, and what are they going through, can also follow. It is not heavy in terms of heavy reading. It's very simple, but it's a very practical tool. That's what I think for me has always kind of been missing in terms of when I'm looking at information and tools that I can give to our care teams. I mean, even though I know, like I said, the environment that I work in and that my care team are in already has LGBTQ plus elders, it's the difficulty, the challenge has always been what is the thing that I need to do in order to make it actually more than just being an ally, but actually be inclusive. And this gives us actually a working tool. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sibi. Yeah, absolutely. I think we really wanted to have something come out of it that people can actually use in practice, rather than having some academic paper that would end up on a shelf, which is maybe too often the case. And I think because all of us went into this project with the same goal of actually creating change, we have made it happen that we have created something that people can actually use in practice. And really excited to hear people's feedback once they start using it as well. Sally, did you have a legacy hand or
I do.
another?
Yes,
Yeah.
just a couple of other things too. Is that when we got together as a group, aside from a couple of us, none of us knew each other. But what became very apparent to me is that we're all on the same sheet. We're all wanting to make a change. We're all wanting to improve things. And also because most of us are over 60, it's about not we've still got brains that we want to use. It's not just that we're over the hill now. We still want to contribute. And our age is actually a benefit for us. And the thing is, all of us here had very many different skills. One of us is extremely good on IT, and I'm not going to embarrass the person by saying it, but very good on IT. Other people are actually physically doing the job. Other people are living the job. And it was just such an all-inclusive environment to be within. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that including all those different perspectives really made it a success, didn't it? Yeah. So sort of following on from that, we know historically that a lot of, someone has mentioned in the chat as well, how important the historical context is, that a lot of older LGBTQ plus people coming in 60s, 70s, 80s now have had to hide their identity for quite a big part of their life, and have lived through discriminatory laws and regulations, and that has an effect on how much sort of confidence you have in public services, and sort of so that we could see that historically there might be a bit of tension between a group of older LGBTQ plus people and a group of care providers. And how was it to work together as that group and to come together and learn from each other in that regard? Sue.
I found it very thought-provoking. I think the finished resource is probably much more strong because of the different perspectives that people brought to the party, as it were. And for me, I found it a very respectful group of people to be in. As Sally said, we're all singing off the same song sheet. We were all aiming at the same end point. And I found actually the perspectives that different people brought to things actually strengthened it and made it an even more positive kind of experience. So that three-way academic, care home providers, and those of us with the lived experience, I thought we worked together very well. Much in part to the good organisation and the good shepherding that you did. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd echo what Sue said. Absolutely. Same for me. To come to that one, that the comment that Beth made about boomers, baby boomers, and the contrast between what the expectations are of people that preceded us, who lived their lives out when, if they're male homosexuals, in an illegal kind of criminalized way, and even after that was decriminalized, late 1960s, actually the amount of criminalization actually accelerated after that, but this is not a history lesson. It is about what people expect, and what I expect is going to be different from the next generation down, whose freedoms in terms of, understanding their liberty, in terms of their sexuality or their gender identity, whatever that is, they are not going to put up with care that doesn't work for them. And so this is a different. The boomers now are the people who are coming into the era where that they may have developed dementia. They're older. They need support. They need care. They need advocates. I think it's going to be a different story for the next generation. So yes, I think this is a bit of a pilot generation for this work, and this is why this resource is so important, because it takes time for social attitudes to catch up and change, and for society to change. Whilst we've been waiting 50 years, most of us here, not everybody, forgive me if you're not as old as I am, but we've waited nearly 50 years for real change. And it's yes, the laws have changed. Yes, things are different. Yes, things are better. But if we're looking at care and being worried about it, then not quite enough has changed yet. So that's in terms of my kind of reflection on who's expecting what and how that will change over time. And we need this resource right now. Yeah.
Absolutely, Mike. Thank you. Sally.
Yes, I agree with you, Mike. And there's something too about the legislation, because legislation has changed and it is changing, and it is working for the benefit of people who are more vulnerable in society. But what I felt, and is actually a practice issue, so staff really do need to become more acquainted with what the do's and don'ts are. But I also felt that this resource was looking at, it's working in a kinder, less you must do this. The suggestions that we've made here are working in line with what we would feel that we will need, and what we know older people in care homes are saying that they need. But I would also say that there's a lot of people in care homes who are very much in the closet and gone back into the closet. And don't forget, when people are going into care homes, they've already experienced significant losses in their lives, their health, their home, their finances, their relationships, their partnerships. To lose your identity as well, because you're not going into an environment that you feel confident that you can be you, is an incredibly damaging thing to people's psyche and to their emotional well-being. But I felt that we weren't looking at this guide in like a blaming attitude. It was more a case of, let's all work together with this and let's try and see if we can just make things better, at least for one person in every care home.
Absolutely, Sally. I think we've really tried to take that approach of drawing people in rather than calling them out. We're not saying this is what you're doing wrong, but yeah, absolutely. And I think that is also the way to change rather than focusing on the negative. Martin.
Sorry, I thought I was number 2 on that. I can't remember your original question now, Jolie. And what I wanted to say was that the actual Z card, to me, if that's in someone's pocket or in a little wallet, and it's just one word that's used differently, that's what makes the difference. Not an enormous, great academic paper, it's not the huge stuff. It's that thoughtfulness and that one phrase or that one little knock, as it were, or nudge rather than not, a nudge somewhere else, which makes the difference, and all that builds up.
Very much agree. And I think it's also important that people understand that it doesn't have to be some big undertaking. It is in those small gestures, just small things like your language, and and that's the things you look out for when you're LGBTQ plus, and that's the signs that tell you I'm safe here. Sibby.
I was going to actually exactly say that my experience is that it's never the big gestures and the big things that are important to your everyday life. It's usually just someone smiling, or someone just showing you a bit of kindness, or someone using the correct pronouns, someone addressing in the way that you want to be addressed, and just confirming or affirming your identity. That is what becomes important to you in your day-to-day life. And I think hopefully that is what we have kind of created with this tool. And what I do like about it is the positive, I like this word, positive intent with the Z card. Yes, the law is the law, and it has the do's and don'ts, and the policies are actually very much about what you must do and what you mustn't do in terms of your work environment or your lived environment. Whereas this is more the practical tips of this is what you can do on a day-to-day basis, or in this situation, on this occasion. This is what you might help if someone is just walking through and sort of inquiring about, what services you offer, starting from there, for example. And just again, as a reminder to everyone on this call, this is essentially, that's it. This is this lovely little card, the back and front of it. And then it's when you open it up that becomes all this lovely big stuff. But it fits nicely into your ID card, into the back of your staff members. Very nicely fits into it. It's a very easy, practical thing, and a nice little reminder as you're just sitting there, just looking at, little the back, and a little thing that you might just pick up one word or two words as everyone is saying. It's a very easy user guide, I think. So I like them. I want more.
Thank you, Sibby. Really great of you to show it on the camera as well. Thank you. Sally.
Oh, forgot what I was going to say. Yes, for me, it's a conversation starter. So if somebody, a member of staff, a relative, a resident, who sees this may actually want to go in and ask a few more questions, and it's questions that relate across the age groups. So obviously people are different generations within residential nursing care, but different genders, different race, different faith, different, we're all very different. So personalisation is all about being different and that difference being accepted. And in answer to one of the previous questions about the historical impact upon this, is that older people, and the older a person is in society or within a care home, the more likely they are to have been criminalised, medicalised, being seen as being sinful within faith, that they've been looked at and inspected and researched and thought about as in a different way from people who are straight. And at the end of the day, it's all just on one spectrum. But if you don't ask the question and you don't appreciate what someone's life has been, you're never going to know. So it's a beneficial thing, starting these conversations within the homes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think, we talked a lot about how a lot of it is around opening the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think I've made the joke too many times that I'm Dutch, so I'm not the British, let's not talk about it. So with my Dutchness, I'm trying to bring this conversation to the table. And I think what we've heard from some of you who work in care with who are supporting this project, also that they've had really interesting conversations off the back of this, and how valuable that has been. And I think that's a fantastic thing to come out of this. Someone mentioned as well the importance of the intersectional factors, and that's something that we've really tried to integrate in the resource as well. So to say that people should, not should, but that we recommend that you look at faith-based LGBTQ plus organizations and culture organizations, and to recognize that people can belong to different minority groups that have different experiences, and maybe face discrimination in multiple ways. Sibby, did you want to? I saw you had your hand up.
I think you just covered it. I was going to say what
Right.
exactly you just said. That that maybe it is important to just say that in its simplicity, it also means that we have not delved in detail into those subject matters, and it's important to acknowledge that and to say that. But we have signposted where those maybe there will be other services and other research work and other projects and other initiatives that will cover those in more detail and more depth.
Yeah.
But for this, it is exactly that, a conversation starter.
Yeah, simple.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm just looking as we're getting towards 3 o'clock. So someone asks, videos of people who have lived experience, seeing and hearing them speak about their experience can be very powerful and impactful. Is there any reason you did not show the speakers in the video? Part of this, I think, was due to the limited resources we had, that we had to work with what we had, but also we wanted to, the video was also very much a product of accessibility. And we know that people who struggle with who, for example, have hearing challenges, that if they can read the text at the same time as listening to it, it can be really helpful for taking in the information. So we've also tested that with people who have hearing difficulties. So it was really from that perspective. And I completely agree with you that it's important to listen to lived experience and to see people. And I do believe from other projects and resources that we refer to in the Z card, that's very much out there as well. So yeah, that was why. Yes, absolutely. Not everyone wants to disclose, and I think we've put that in the Z card as well. It's never, you should never pressure someone into outing them. Great, and some thank yous. Well, as we're coming towards 3 o'clock, that went really fast. Just another big thank you to everyone for attending this launch today. We're very proud of the end product, and we really hope that you all have gone to the link in the chat how you can access it online, but also please feel free to get in touch if you are interested in seeing if you could pay for some printing of the physical Z card. As people have said, it's a really great format that we have definitely especially chosen that because we think it works well in a care home context. I'll put my email address in the chat again so you can contact me. Yeah, if you have any further questions or want to know more about the project or the resource, if you have any feedback, please feel free to get in touch. And otherwise, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.